Chosen one, I know exactly what you're staring at right now. I know the quiet, suffocating humiliation that settles over you when you look at the outer circumstances of your life. The numbers in your bank account, the instability of your living situation, the material realities that seem to scream that you are failing. You are carrying a spiritual calling that feels massive, a prophetic assignment that burns in your bones, an internal knowing that God has set you apart for something extraordinary. And yet when you look at your hands, they are empty. When you look at your life, it looks like a construction site that ran out of funding. You watch people who carry a fraction of your spiritual depth walking easily into promotions, buying homes, securing their futures, and building comfortable lives. Meanwhile, you are calculating how to survive the week. You are living in the brutal, agonizing gap between what you know God has spoken over your spirit and what the physical world says about your current value. You feel materially stripped. You feel financially delayed. You feel like the absolute contradiction of your own calling. How can you be chosen if you are struggling just to survive? How can you be anointed to lead, to build, to change generations, when you cannot even manifest the basic stability that the world considers normal? I need you to stop judging your spiritual altitude by your current material altitude, because what you are experiencing is not a contradiction of your calling. It is the exact, historically documented terrain that every deeply chosen person is required to walk before the building of their true kingdom begins. This financial humiliation, this season of displacement and material lack, is not random. It is not a sign that you have missed your path, and it is certainly not a sign that God is punishing you for a lack of faith. It is a recognizable, verifiable pattern of preparation. When God is about to build something through a human life that the world has never seen before, He does not begin by handing that person a fortune. He begins by stripping them of their reliance on worldly metrics. He creates a season where the chosen one must learn to carry the weight of the miraculous while standing in the dirt of the mundane. The gap between your internal anointing and your external reality is not a void. It is a forge. It is the place where your ego is dismantled, where your fear of man's opinion is burned away, and where your absolute dependence on the voice of God is locked into your spiritual DNA. But when you are in the middle of it, it does not feel like preparation. It feels like public failure. It feels like you are a fraud. And that feeling is exactly what the enemy of your calling has been exploiting. I know what the adversary has been whispering to you in the middle of the night, when the house is quiet and the anxiety about the future is loud. He has been pointing to your lack of resources and saying, if God is really with you, why is it this hard? If you are really chosen, where is the proof? The enemy wants you to believe that poverty is a symptom of spiritual illegitimacy. He wants you to look at your delayed milestones, the career that hasn't launched, the business that hasn't broken through, the stability that constantly slips through your fingers, and conclude that you are delusional. He wants to weaponize your empty hands to convince you to abandon the assignment. He is trying to shame you into shrinking back, into taking a safe, ordinary path just to escape the pressure of standing in the gap. He is terrified of what you are about to build, so he is trying to bankrupt your spirit by pointing at your bank account. But I need you to look at the history of the restoration. I need you to look at the life of the man who carried the greatest dispensation of all time, because the enemy's lie falls apart the moment you look at the actual life of Joseph Smith. For most of his ministry, the prophet of the restoration was broke, in debt, homeless, and mocked for his poverty. We look at Joseph Smith now through the lens of history, seeing the millions of people who revere his name, seeing the towering temples and the vast global organization that grew from his revelations. But that is not what his life looked like in the 1830s. I need you to see the reality of Joseph's daily existence. The man who was translating ancient records, commanding angels, and receiving the mysteries of the cosmos was simultaneously worrying about how to buy flour for his family. He was moving from place to place, unable to provide stability for his wife Emma in any conventional sense. They lived in other people's homes. They relied on the charity of friends like Martin Harris and Newell K. Whitney just to survive. Lucy Mack Smith, Joseph's mother, documented the sheer destitution of their family during those early years. They were stripped, persecuted, and constantly displaced. When Joseph was living in Hiram, Ohio, at the John Johnson farm, translating the Bible and receiving staggering revelations about the degrees of glory, he was living in borrowed space. And it was there in his poverty that a mob dragged him into the freezing night, choked him, and covered his naked, beaten body in hot tar and feathers. The world looked at Joseph Smith and saw a vagabond, a debtor, a man who claimed to speak with God but could not even secure a deed to his own property without intense struggle. When the Kirtland Safety Society collapsed in 1837, Joseph was saddled with massive debt. He was financially humiliated. He had to flee Kirtland in the dead of winter, riding through the night to escape creditors and enemies who wanted his life, leaving behind the very temple he had sacrificed everything to build. He arrived in Missouri a refugee, only to be driven out again under the extermination order, losing lands, homes, and every ounce of worldly security. He was mocked for his poverty as much as for his prophecies. The critics pointed at his ragged clothes and his constant displacement and laughed. They said exactly what the enemy is saying to you right now. If he is a prophet, why is he so poor? If God is with him, why is he constantly running? The man who would eventually build Nauvoo, the most beautiful city in Illinois, a place of industry, architecture, and temporal power, started with nothing that the world would call significant. God allowed Joseph to walk through more than a decade of financial humiliation, public mocking, and crushing material instability before he allowed the building of Nauvoo to begin. Why? Because the outer condition is always temporary, but the calling is permanent. God had to forge a man who could not be bought, a man who would not compromise the revelation for a comfortable life, a man whose faith was not tied to his physical comfort. Look at what God finally told Joseph when he was at the absolute lowest point of his material existence. It wasn't in Kirtland, and it wasn't during a season of success. It was in Liberty Jail. Joseph had lost everything. The saints were homeless, wandering in the freezing mud of winter. Joseph was locked in a subterranean dungeon, sleeping on dirty straw, eating poisoned food, his family destitute. He had zero resources, zero leverage, and zero visible hope. He cried out to God in agony, asking where the pavilion was that covered God's hiding place. And God's response, recorded in Doctrine and Covenants section 121, verses 7 and 8, is the doctrinal anchor for everything you are experiencing right now. My son, peace be unto thy soul. Thine adversity and thine afflictions shall be but a small moment. And then if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high. Thou shalt triumph over all thy foes. God did not immediately send a bag of gold to the jail. He did not immediately change the balance sheet. He changed Joseph's perspective of time and identity. Thine adversity, this current financial humiliation, this material stripping, this season of living in the gap, shall be but a small moment. The Lord was validating the eternal weight of Joseph's calling while relativizing the temporary nature of his current circumstances. He was telling Joseph, your current poverty is not your identity. Your current prison is not your final destination. You are a builder of eternal things, and this temporary stripping is just the clearing of the ground. That is exactly what is happening to you. You are in your 1830s. You are in the Kirtland and Missouri phases of your calling. You are looking at the debts, the lack of traction, the delayed promises, and you are feeling the exact same humiliation Joseph felt when he had to flee his own home. You are watching your peers build their comfortable, ordinary lives, and you are wondering why your path is so fraught with struggle. It is because you are not building an ordinary life. You are not building a simple frontier cabin. You are being prepared to build Nauvoo. You are being prepared to establish something that will outlast you, something that carries the weight of the miraculous. And the foundation for that kind of spiritual and temporal architecture can only be dug in the soil of utter dependence on God. The gap between what you carry and what your circumstances currently reflect is the exact terrain you must walk. God is not ignoring your needs. He is tempering your soul. He is ensuring that when the resources do come, and they will come because Nauvoo is in your future, you will not worship the resources. You will not find your identity in the manifestation of the blessing because you have already found your identity in the God who gave it. The material stripping you have endured was designed to break your reliance on the world's systems of validation. You had to learn how to stand in the dark, with nothing in your pockets, and still know that you are a king, a queen, a priest, a priestess, a builder, a chosen one. You had to learn how to command the atmosphere of your life even when the natural circumstances of your life were screaming in rebellion. Your identity is not tied to your current address. Your worthiness is not calculated by your current income. You are not behind schedule. You are deeply embedded in the prophetic timeline of preparation. The humiliation is breaking. The season of displacement is coming to an end. The foundational work that required you to be stripped is almost complete. You have endured the mocking of those who do not understand the invisible weight you carry. You have survived the nights of panic when the math did not make sense. You have stayed faithful to the vision when every natural indicator told you to abandon it. And now, the season is turning. The small moment of adversity is giving way to the revelation of what you have actually been building all along. Do not let the enemy convince you to be ashamed of your current terrain. Wear your scars with dignity. Stand tall in the middle of your unfinished life. You are in the company of prophets. You are in the lineage of those who had to lose the world to gain the kingdom, only to have the kingdom manifest in the world through their hands. The blueprint is secure. The architect is with you. The resources of heaven are being aligned for the next phase of your assignment. You are about to step out of the wilderness of preparation and into the city of your calling. It is time to align your mouth with your identity. It is time to stop apologizing for the gap and start declaring the promise. Speak this with me right now. Let it resonate in your spirit and shatter the atmosphere of lack around you. My circumstances are not my identity. My calling is not measured by what I currently hold in my hands. The gap between my anointing and my physical reality is not a contradiction. It is a preparation. I release the shame of my current season. I release the need to prove my calling to a world that judges by outward appearance. I embrace the history of the chosen. I embrace the stripping that clears the ground for the miraculous. I am not failing, I am being forged. The adversity I face is but a small moment. My God is my provider, my vindicator, and my source. I am building something the world cannot yet see. The foundation is secure. My character is catching up to my calling. I am stepping out of the shadows of displacement. I am walking into the architecture of my purpose. My Nauvoo is coming, and I am ready to build.